Would I be the asshole? If I don't tell my wife that her best friend tried to kiss me, it had been a quiet night, or so I thought. The kind of night when you settle into the comfort of your own home, waiting for your wife to return from her late shift. Lynn, her best friend of over 15 years, was the last person I expected to see at the door, especially not drunk, disheveled, and crying uncontrollably. "Lynn," I said, stepping back to let her in. She could barely stand. My first thought was how dangerous it had been for her to drive in this condition. Between sobs, she stumbled through her words, lamenting her failed relationships and lamenting her wish for a man like me. I froze, unsure of how to respond. This wasn't the Lynn I knew, a confident, outgoing woman who had always treated me like a brother. I awkwardly patted her shoulder, letting her vent as I stood stiffly. But then, suddenly, she leaned in and kissed me. It caught me completely off guard. My body tensed, and I pushed her back immediately. "What are you doing, Lynn?" I asked, shocked. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean to. I didn't know what to do. She was a wreck, but I couldn't let her leave like this. She wasn't in a state to drive, so I grabbed my keys and dropped her off at her apartment. When my wife got home later that night, she asked why Lynn's car was in our driveway. I told her Lynn had been drunk and upset, but I didn't mention the kiss. That decision would come back to haunt me for the next 2 days. Lynn bombarded me with texts, begging me not to tell my wife. She swore it was a mistake, that it would never happen again, and that she didn't want to lose her best friend. I ignored her messages, but the guilt was eating me alive. I had to tell my wife. When I sat her down and confessed everything, her reaction was explosive. She was furious not just at Lynn, but at me for hiding it from her. "Why didn't you tell me right away?" she demanded, tears welling in her eyes. "I was scared," I admitted. "I didn't want to hurt you or ruin your friendship." She didn't seem to care. From that moment on, she imposed strict rules. I wasn't allowed to talk to any of her friends, including Lynn. I had to block her on all platforms, and she demanded complete transparency, open phone policy, constant updates, the works. I agreed to everything. I loved my wife and didn't want to lose her, even if it meant sacrificing some of my own freedom. But the strain was unbearable. One night, after weeks of tension, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to Lynn for answers. "What's really going on here?" I asked her. "Why did you kiss me? And why does my wife think she can control every aspect of my life now?" Lynn hesitated but eventually confessed. "Your wife has always been insecure. She's terrified of losing you, and she doesn't want any woman getting close to you. She told me to stay away from you, but she said it was your idea." I was stunned. My wife had lied to both of us. Lynn continued, her voice bitter. "She's always bragging about you, like you're her trophy. I guess I fell for you, too. But she doesn't deserve you. She's controlling and jealous, and I thought maybe you'd be better off with someone who actually loves you." I left, feeling more confused and betrayed than ever. When I confronted my wife, she didn't deny it. "I did it for us," she said, as if that justified everything. "I love you, and I wanted to protect our marriage. You should be grateful to have a wife who cares this much about you." But I couldn't see it that way. "This isn't love," I told her. "This is control. You've turned our marriage into a prison." Despite her tearful apologies and promises to change, I knew it was over. I had given everything to this relationship, and it had turned toxic. The next day, I filed for divorce. My wife has been calling and texting nonstop, begging me to reconsider, but I've made up my mind. Sometimes, love isn't enough. Trust and respect are just as important, and once they're gone, there's no going back. Moral of the story: relationships thrive on trust, not control. Trying to dominate or manipulate your partner may keep them physically close, but it will destroy the emotional bond that holds you together.